Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Femdom Mystique Podcast. And this is your hostess, Mistress Simone. I am here with the lovely Alice in Bondageland, one of my favorite people, and one of my Jack Cyber's favorite people.
Oh, yeah.
My foot slave just loves you.
I'll try to live up to that hype. Hopefully.
I think it's because he met you last year at DomCon and he just loved your style. And nice. I love your style as well. So we are going to be talking a little bit about Alice's unique take on BDSM and her wonderfully vibrant personality in videos. So Alice, welcome.
Thank you very much. It's exciting to get to be on your podcast.
So for my listeners, would you mind telling a little bit about yourself and how you identify yourself, what kind of style you think that you have?
Well, I think central to my style is my belief that in order to get people to experience BDSM for the first time, we have to show them that it's actually really fun and that real people really do it, that it's not just made up for a camera. There are real couples living this lifestyle. There are real people that you can visit to experience it firsthand. And not only that it exists, but that it's actually really great. And you're really missing out if you don't let yourself experience it.
I think that is a fantastic attitude. And I think that's one reason that your videos are so fun to watch. I'm not a very big porn watcher. I prefer to do.
Yeah.
But I do, the creativity in your videos is one thing that I think you are very skilled at and comes across in that you are a real person and that you are enjoying what you're doing and you can see the passion and the love you have for the people that you do with your scenes, and I think that's just fantastic. You don't get that very often. It's what I would consider real BDSM videos.
It's a challenge to try to showcase authenticity on camera without destroying it. You know, it's like trying to enjoy a flower without picking it.
That's a great way to put it.
But having a camera present can change things. But when I came of age as a porn consumer, I found it very difficult to relate to the porn that was available on DVD or later on the internet. Because there was a competition to see who could be the meanest, you know, who could do the worst thing to a sub, who could gangbang someone with the maximum number of people.
Or the biggest.
Yeah, and that competitiveness and that desire to be slasher movie, scary, edgy, really started to make it look unappealing. You know, how can you convince your wife to tie you up and smack you in the balls if the only examples you can show her are of women not really having a very good time while they do it?
That is a great concept.
So the only available archetypes for femdoms in video when I first got started were either the stern woman or the angry woman or the ice queen or the vengeance, you know, all of the negative. Was all that was available in terms of what you could aspire to be as a woman trying to ask yourself, is feminine dominance for me? And the kind of sex I was having was all about laughing, making jokes at the sub's expense, coming up with very silly reasons to punish people or kind of cascading punishments that gets them into increasingly ridiculously complicated predicaments. You know,
which is one thing I love about your style.
I would describe my style more like I Love Lucy than, you know, Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
I would agree with that. You know, but everybody needs I Love Lucy in their life. You can only have so much, Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
And at a certain point, if you look at lifestyle couples, some of the hardest, most intense, orgasmic, transcendent scenes happen when you're in your boxers and house slippers or, you know, comfy clothes. So I try to showcase a huge variety of body shapes and clothing and experience levels and techniques, because it's not just professionals that do this, and it's not just skinny people that do this, and it's not just white people that do this. BDSM, accepted or not by society, happens in almost all cultures and has happened in almost all cultures throughout history as far as we can tell.
Agreed.
The only part that's changed is whether or not we're comfortable talking about it openly as a society or not.
So you bring up a couple points there that I'd like to touch on with you. And let's start with the acceptance of society. you and I in our industry have seen some setbacks.
It's pretty scary right now.
And it's surprising because I've been doing this for a while, and I've seen this down the road before. It's happened before, and it swings one way. BDSM becomes very acceptable, becomes very popular. Look at 50 Shades, NCSI, and then there's a slight backlash, and it kind of goes back the other way. Well, this backlash swung really hard and really quick. What are your thoughts about that?
I believe that on some level we are culturally punishing sex workers because it is a porn star who might take down a corrupt regime in our country.
I'm so glad I'm not the only one that thought of that.
And I think that's part of why it's so swift and so angry and so out of left field compared to where we were moving as a nation and also as a global society in general. I think that there's some toxic masculinity behind it and some very threatened, very angry people involved in the backlash. But,
I agree.
But it's a macrocosm and a microcosm. If it was an accountant who was taking him out, maybe we'd have a backlash against accountants right now. Mm-hmm. But sex workers are always an easy target historically for any kind of controlling or fascist regime.
Yes, we are.
Sexuality is...
Take us down and a lot of freedom goes away. Take us down, a lot of expression goes away.
And as long as someone is ashamed, they're easier to control.
Yes.
So anything that represents a sexual liberation can be perceived as a threat by those that are trying to maybe we can phrase it that they're harnessing sexuality for dark purposes through denial. I prefer consensualities in denial.
I do too. It's no fun if I have to, force it out of you in a bad way or a negative way. I want you to give it to me willingly. Offer it to me as a sacrifice. Offer it to me as a pagan worship goddess.
I like that concept of sacrifice or worshipful offering.
Yes. So I definitely agree with you. I thought that was a very big, swift kick, and I think a part of it was the porn star that came out and spoke about it. How have you made some changes, if any, since this has happened? And what would you give advice for a young and upcoming sex worker? Would you just tell her now is not the time?
Well, it's always the time, I would say. Now is always the best time for anything you're doing when it comes to following your heart. And I'm sure there's many potential sex workers out there who are weighing the pros and cons of that. I come from it from a different perspective since my focus has always been on making my kind of pornamentory style videos.
That's a great way to put it. I love that.
I don't do any scripts. It's much more like a real scene but with better lighting.
That's probably video I could do.
Excellent. I would love to feature you on my site sometime. That'd be great.
I'll have to come for a visit.
But I mean, of course, this has reminded me to make sure I always have the correct model paperwork signed and that I have a conversation with the models about whether or not they want to show their face, how they would like to be disguised. Covering tattoos, things like that are always a possibility. Since I'm working with people who have a lot more to lose than people who are already established porn performers.
Very true.
So my collaborators put a lot of trust in me to keep that information safe. But also, it's interesting to find out how those porn rules will change. In the time I've been making movies, there's been credit card legislation enacted to avoid it being a free speech issue. So you can show P videos on the internet, you just can't accept Visa or MasterCard or a bank account involved with it. And it'll be interesting to see how cryptocurrency finds ways to work around that. But I have always tried to pay my taxes, report everything correctly. My goal is to keep making art and to keep pushing on the boundary of what's permitted under obscenity, but always in the name of fun. Some kinks scare some people. The clown thing scares people.
And you tend to pick up on the edgy stuff or the stuff that's kind of on the fringe and do.
I would say more of my videos are disturbing rather than dangerous. But always with a sense of fun. I don't write a scene and then seek to fulfill a model call. People will write to me and I'll collaborate with them. It's wish fulfillment. Fantasy fulfillment is a lot of it.
See, now that to me right there means that as a videographer and a dominatrix, you are fulfilling a need in those people, which I think is the bottom line of our career, is fulfilling a wish fulfillment, a fantasy that these people cannot normally get, that they can't get through normal channels, or they've tried, or they're afraid to, or they want to keep it conceptualized just in this little compartment. And I think that's fantastic that you do that. And can you tell my listeners a little bit about your beginnings and how you got started?
Well, I started out with a Polaroid camera taking naughty pictures of my friends and I. Well, actually, no, I guess originally I drew naughty pictures.
Okay.
Then I had a Polaroid camera. Then I had a 35 millimeter camera. And then an offended person at a photo development place, for those of you that remember when photos needed development, got disturbed by some of the content in our photos and exposed several rolls of film. So after that, I had to learn how to develop film.
Oh my gosh.
And then the digital revolution happened. And I went from being a photographer to all of a sudden being a videographer. Because I was doing more and more installation-style bondage art pieces where we were only going to do it once. We had one shot. It was for an audience of whoever happened to be there. And video became a way to kind of preserve those stunts or flash mobs or shenanigans that San Francisco loves to encourage. So video really started as a way to preserve art pieces that we were only going to get one shot at. But they were all kinky art pieces, so it grew from there.
You had your theme started.
And I questioned whether it was a good idea or a bad idea. I wrote fan mail to my favorite bondage website, who also kind of focused on real couples and people who are actually having fun.
Are they still around?
The Serious Bondage Institute in San Francisco. And they invited me out to come meet everyone and shoot videos.
Oh, wow, how wonderful.
So I struck up a friendship with them, and it was them that found out that I had like 100 videos on ice that I had already made.
Oh my gosh.
And I had never considered creating a website at all until these established website folks basically told me, we are building you a website and you have to publish this stuff because no one else is doing anything like this.
And they were correct. That's fantastic that they supported you like that. I've always loved serious bondage. I mean, I have equipment envy. But that is great that they actually saw something and you saw the potential of your style and supported each other, because that's one thing we don't do enough of in this lifestyle, is we support each other and say, hey, all right, I know you are good at this and I'm good at this, so let's work together. So I think that's fantastic.
I really believe strongly in the more connected, powerful women are, the more control of the world we will have. You know, if it behooves the patriarchy to keep powerful women catty and infighting, because as long as we're fighting each other, then we're not kicking ass and changing the entire world in our image.
But would you not say that that extends beyond feminine viewpoint as well, that it goes into all kinds, like ethnic and such sexuality, such as gays?
I think
that keep those groups infighting, keep them small battles focused and going, and you won't notice what we're doing over here behind this curtain.
Exactly. The more we can keep humans artificially divided and artificially fighting one another, the easier they are to control.
Right.
Angry people are easy to control. Fearful people are easy to control. So that's what they want to keep feeding us more of, not this idea of plenty or helpfulness or sisterhood or camaraderie.
Right, that we can all actually get along and not have to have those discussions or those arguments or issues between us.
Or even just the revolutionary idea that there's enough for everybody.
What a concept.
You know, what if there's just enough love and enough people and enough DOMs and enough subs and enough clients for those that take clients and enough food and water? Like, what if there's just enough? What if we don't have to fight over it all?
Right. Instead, we work together and everybody's happy. So let's discuss that a little bit. You said those that take clients. And I know that you do not consider yourself I'm trying not to offend you.
No offense.
So you do not take real-time clients?
Like
I do.
I allow fans to come sign a model release and occasionally appear in videos, but my model application process is less an application and more a pitch. You know, if you and I have good chemistry at a munch, if you have a cool idea, if you are willing to take 202 swats for shots because my hockey team lost the playoffs, You know, if there's something interesting and fun and I think I'll have a good time, then I'm willing to consider collaborating with someone who might not be a professional porn star, but who could wear a hood and sign a model release. Okay. And for that reason, you'll often see people in disguises on my site, but I would rather have a very real experience showcased in a loving way than someone who's kind of paid to go through the motions of an experience.
All right, so let's expand about that a little bit.
Yeah.
Have you gotten negative feedback from other women in the sex industry because of that viewpoint or the way that you go about your own industry?
I think in some ways it's allowed me to have really healthy friendships with pro-doms because they never have to worry about if I'm trying to be the competition. In some ways I'm playing a very different game. And in some ways I'm like, my job right now is to make them look good as possible and showcase them in the best possible light. And since I don't accept clients, if I'm able to say, well, I don't, but this person does, then someone who's seen them participating in a video on my website can say, hey, I saw you in this video. Can you do something like that to me? And I think in some ways, showcasing these very realistic scenes can also show you what does and doesn't happen in a pro-dom session, or what is and isn't realistic in the BDSM lifestyle as far as what a human body can handle and still have it be fun.
Exactly.
But in a lot of ways, I think that I've been regarded as a little odd at DomCon for my first 5 years. But as the internet has really gotten rolling, I've developed really wonderful friendships with women because since I don't have to compete with them for the same client base, I can just focus on making all of us look great and
which you're good at,
and be exciting and yummy and work together. And I think in some ways that's really spared me from a lot of the infighting, since I'm part of but not quite of the same world. There's a lot of Venn diagram,
and I agree with that. I've always had different feelings about the compartmentalization of our industry. Well, you're this kind of dom. You're this kind of dom. You do this. You don't do this. All right. So in the end, when we break it all down, we are still all in the same industry.
Exactly.
Whether we are video or cam or phone or real-time sessions. I don't do video. No, it makes...
Even though you'd be so good in a video with me.
Well, I'll come and visit and we'll do it. I promise. I've had my girlfriends try to teach me how to do video, and my energy doesn't come across in video. And I don't know if it's because I'm stilted, I'm uncomfortable, but I admire the women who can do video, such as yourself. Your videos are so fun, and I love the difference in them that I see from normal videos. Now, don't get me wrong, I love Men in Pain, but there's a element of Men in Pain that it can be very scary to those who may or may not want to go see a pro-dom or have their wife do it.
Yeah.
There's also a little bit of, no, that's really not going to happen, fictitious in some ways. So the fact that you offer a opening to people where it's fun and it's real and they can see it, I think is very admirable as a professional dom. I think it's a great, great way to experience your art and show people that there is another way to do this besides, like you said earlier, kick them in the balls so that it really, really hurts.
I mean, we kicked somebody in the balls earlier today, but...
Kicking people in the balls is always a good thing.
I would say that a lot of my videos end with the moral of, you should try this at home.
Instead of don't try this at home.
Exactly. And I play Deadpool a little bit, where I'll break the fourth wall and address the camera to explain what I'm doing or give some notations about, if you're going to try this at home, here's what to look out for safety-wise.
But I think that makes your videos great, because you reach out to your audience and you're actually acknowledging that they're there and that they may have these concerns, as opposed to completely vapid expressions where you don't notice the camera at all and you just continue with the scene. I think that that's much more personable. And if I was a lifestyle person, male submissive or female submissive, who wanted to go into it, your videos are a great place to start.
I like to make videos that you could watch with a partner and have it be a springboard for negotiation or experimentation. And I try to also balance the sexy stuff with the educational stuff with the outright weird stuff. You know, I have a time-lapse video where I keep a submissive in a straitjacket cross-country on a train trip from San Francisco to Washington, D.C.
That's fabulous.
And it's my favorite scene of all time. But as a fan once told me, this is incredible, but I don't know how to masturbate to it. You know, how do I masturbate to this time lapse of bondage across the United States?
Obviously, we know what his goal in watching porn is, which is most people's goal. Okay.
But
that's a good question.
But no one had ever done it before, and I wanted to show that we really kept this submissive in a straitjacket for 3 whole days without resorting to like a silly clock in the background or something.
Right.
Something that couldn't be faked. That proved that the long-term bondage was truly long-term. But I'm not sure. For those of you at home, I'm not sure what advice to give on how to masturbate about it.
Freeze frame. Just pick a frame.
Well, lock yourself in chastity, maybe, and that's the way to play along with that video, perhaps.
There you go. So tell me a little bit about your own personal turn-ons and kinks. And you know, obviously, I get the feeling, tell me if I'm wrong here, but I get the feeling that you really don't do anything in front of the camera that you don't like.
I think that smart viewers can always tell when I'm not having a good time. And so I'd rather say no to a video rather than make a video that doesn't have legs, that doesn't have the spark or enthusiasm to it. But I do have a whole lot of kinks. And I often don't expect any one partner to embody all of them because my kink list is so huge and so eclectic and so nuanced. You know, not everybody is a hockey fan. Not everybody wants to wear panties. Not everyone likes CBT.
Not everybody likes pain. Not everybody likes bondage.
So if we could sum it up into less of a fetish list, I enjoy creating peak experiences with lots of energy released. And often that means playing to my partner's fetishes because that's what gets my submissive going, and therefore that's what's going to bring me the most energetic feedback in a scene. So unless I really want to find someone to wear this Bruins jersey so I can hit them, I would much more rather have a fluid negotiation rather than a script or an agenda. But sometimes I'll have fantasies like the cross-country train trip or the swats for shocks, where I'll kind of put it out to the world. Hey, does anyone else think this sounds fun? But my peak kinks are a lot of role reversals, a lot of endurance, or I prefer to think of it as an ordeal.
All right.
Where you are stripped of your clothing and your identity and must endure an initiation of some kind, but where you come out the other side victorious.
That's a great concept, a way of thinking of it. A journey.
Yeah, I'm not into scenes where submissives fail. You know,
why would you want your submissive to fail? I've never understood that concept.
Some people want to feel like they are a loser. And
now that I can understand, but would you not consider that coming from the submissive's own inner workings?
I think so, and I would much rather build them into winners. I have a part drill sergeant, part priestess kind of aspect to it. I want to build people up and make them better, and sometimes that means breaking them down so that you can release all of the things that are holding you back. But in general, I aim for improving, like increased confidence, like you've survived. That's you've
made it through.
I will often end scenes with
like Super Mutter. Come film with Alice in Bondageland.
Like we often will end scenes with a round of applause and everyone cheering, "Yay, you survived!
You did it!"
But it's a victory when you make it to the top of the mountain. It's a victory when you take the 202nd swat for shots.
Yes, in my opinion, you should be rewarded for that.
So I like scenes that have a catharsis or an initiation or a redemption or a victory to them because I mean, they don't always get to have an orgasm, so that's the closest they get to a happy ending in some cases.
Your happy ending is everybody doing this.
Exactly.
Well done,
it doesn't have to be an orgasmic release for it to count as a cathartic release.
I also think that may be an interesting concept that a lot of people who view sex work from the outside think that we are all about people getting orgasms and their rocks off. And I tell people that probably 70% of the people that come see me don't care about their orgasm. They care about the release, the relaxation, the control. That's what they come to see me for. Yes, they're the guys that come to see me just because I have a Venus 2000.
Oh, that's pretty tempting.
That's
if I was a guy, I'd be interested in that.
Well, they do make a female device. So I think that's a common misconception, is that it's all about getting your rocks off. And yes, it can be, and orgasms are great. I mean, who doesn't want a lot of orgasms? But it also is about energetic release and energetic exchange and control and all those lovely things that you mentioned.
And I find the more layers we can involve with it, the more fun it becomes, and also the more cathartic and dramatic it can be as well. Like, not just dramatic in the sense of we're going to get this great shot for my website, but profound, you know, and experience that leaves you changed or with further insight.
And I think that's a wonderful way to think of things. And I think that more sex workers should actually kind of incorporate that into their practice. It's all great to beat the shit out of someone, especially if it's, you know, what they want, but does that transform them? Does that transform you? No. So what would you say was the most difficult video you've ever done in your career?
Most difficult? Well, I know which one was the most dangerous.
We can go with that.
And that was the one where I climbed on a granite countertop wearing high-heeled boots and poured whiskey down my boots.
Took your own life into your hands with that one, didn't you?
In retrospect, that was probably one of the most dangerous, slippery, possibly disastrous things I've ever done.
Yes.
But
brave girl.
Our most daring in public, I would say, was with the pony girl Tindala at in front of the Painted Ladies' houses of fame in San Francisco. And we didn't really know how we'd be received. We were careful to be fully clothed and geared up so that it wasn't a nudity or a sex thing. But we basically set up a pony cart in a very public park in the middle of the day in San Francisco, and people loved it.
Wow.
We weren't sure if we were going to get arrested.
I'm going to go watch that one.
But a different time, we tied a Sissy to the Golden Gate Bridge, and of course we were stopped by the cops. But
I was going to say, how long did it take before you got stopped?
The cops wanted to know three things. One, if we were going to jump or not. That was the first question.
That makes sense.
Number two, were we protesting something?
Again, makes sense.
And number three, if it was consensual.
Okay. I thought the first thing they'd ask you is if you had a permit.
No, those were the three questions. They told us, and I quote, "Happy Folsom Street Fair, don't let your shenanigans get too out of control."
That's fantastic.
So I've used the word shenanigans ever since, because anything that can get a cop to use the word shenanigans, like, you're winning there.
I was going to say, you're scoring some points there.
But I try to play safe and repeatable. I don't need to do a lot of edge play because of the fact that, you don't need to be edgy to be really extreme in terms of an experience, and B, I really want people to try this at home, so I try to showcase best practices.
Excellent. Now, would you consider yourself a lifestyle?
Oh, absolutely. This has been my lifestyle for a very, very long time. How can I politely say that? I've received a happy Alice is finally legal birthday party on my 18th birthday from the dungeon.
Okay, that's a good way to put it.
I had written to them saying that I was legally emancipated and wanting to attend munches, and they were very careful to say, we support your desire to educate yourself, but come back when you're 18, kid.
Got it.
So that was the agreement. I would not get them in trouble, but they would throw me a party when I finally was old enough. But I left town for college very, very young. I zoomed on scholarships and knew from a very young age that I was kinky. And all of my partners have been kinky. I've never had that awkward vanilla kink moment where I realized that I'm different from my partner. My first kiss, we came out to each other about all our kinks, and he turned 18 and got a job at Leather Masters, and then we were unstoppable.
It's nice to hear that, because I'm the same way. I tied up my first boyfriend when I was 15.
Yep.
Spanked him when I was 15. I've always been kinky.
It's just been a
It's been
universal theme in my relationships and my art.
Do you think that that makes us in some ways a little bit less able or more able to understand someone who may have struggled with coming out?
I think it leaves us in a really good position to hold the lantern for those still in the darkness. You know, we proved that it's possible to live this lifestyle, and this lifestyle is real and not invented for television. It's not fiction.
Right.
And I think a lot of people are just waiting to be given permission. And that if we can, a lot of our life can be a kind of implicit permission. You know, like a grand encouragement of those who haven't yet taken the first step, but know in their hearts that they want to.
Look, it can be done. It does happen.
Exactly. It is real.
Do you think that the backlash with the current administration and view on sexuality is going to set us back into the closet a little bit more and make it harder for people to come out and say, I want this?
I think that it's too late to put all the cats back into the bag, and that this is a little bit like a rubber band snapping back. But I don't see this stopping. You know, if anything, it's almost off the rails, and this reactionary push against it is because they've realized that it's almost too late. So,
exactly. So they're trying to save it and grab it back at the last minute and see if they can.
But look at what the youth is doing. You know, 20% of young people in this country identify as gender fluid. 20 years ago, that was not something that you were given social permission to talk about.
We didn't have a word for it 20 years ago.
Huge numbers of uncomfortable people wondering what was wrong with them and if they were the only one. Now know that it's way more common than we had any idea of. And the more we realize how not alone we are, I think the more the efforts to silence us and marginalize us will fail. So
I am a very big proponent of education. And I've never in my entire career been in the closet.
That's awesome.
It just doesn't fit my personality. If you Google me, you will probably find my real name sometime down the path. And I think that I'm in a very rare position to be there for those that cannot put their face forward. What do you feel is the role of sex workers in taking up that mantle and saying, hey, we're here? And if you have your face out, should you then become more activistic? Is that be involved in activism?
I think that the act of coming out at all is inherently a revolutionary one. That the more sex workers identify with the sex worker umbrella, the less of a stigma there will be, because there are so many different levels and styles and kinds. But as far as the stigma goes, years ago, it was very difficult to get naked photos made of yourself.
Yes, it was. Yes.
So
we didn't have cell phones with selfies.
There was a certain barrier to entry that separated the naked on camera from the muggles, if you would.
Correct.
But now I think we would be hard pressed to find anyone who has not been in a naked photo. And I think that
I've been in a naked photo, so I can't say no.
Even vanilla people, naked photos, they've become a normal part of our technological life. And I think that aspect of ending the stigma is almost impossible. That maybe 10 years ago, a leaked nude of a celebrity was a true scandal. And now you're
just
free to
post
your own nudes on Instagram. Exactly.
So how do you feel that has affected our overall societal view on sex and nudity in general? Do you think it's a good thing? Do you think it's a bad thing? Because I have an opinion of it. I'm not so sure that the ease of doing that is necessarily a good thing for all the sex workers.
Well, it certainly is a good idea to think very carefully about publishing photos or videos of yourself like that. And having the barrier to entry be so low means a lot of people have not considered the consequences.
Correct.
Because being naked on the internet is forever.
It's not going away.
Which is why I encourage any of my collaborators, if there's any shadow of a doubt, just wear a mask. Pick a mask that will represent you as a character. And that way, we won't have to worry about that at all.
Right.
But it's interesting to see how things like the revenge porn bills about stolen photos might proceed. But I think in general,
we have one going on in Missouri right now.
In general, I think that everyone having nude photos of themselves evens the playing fields and will lessen the stigma. But I encourage anyone who identifies with any aspect of the sex worker umbrella to consider themselves an activist by virtue of existing.
That's a great way to view it.
Especially if you're out to anyone in your family or any of your friends. But not everyone has to be out. If you don't feel comfortable being a banner waver like that, then see to your own healing and safety, and we'll regard you as being allies, even if you can't wave the freak flag quite like we do.
Quite. So, as a lifestyler, what would you consider the structure of your dominance?
Structure in terms of style, or
style, and are you monogamous? Are you poly?
Oh, like relationship structure.
Yes. What pronoun do you use?
I identify as female most of the time. I do have a male alter ego that I'll sometimes portray, and it's nice to have an outlet for my masculinity. I consider myself pansexual, but I find that because I'm a very masculine woman, I tend to prefer either feminine men or people who kind of embody the opposite of that dynamic. Like as the masculine and female, I really like the feminine in men.
All right.
So in some ways, I've got some gender queerity, but I'm poly as the day is long, my mom once said.
That sounds like a great mom.
I used to say I had the tragic tendency to fall in love with more than one person at a time, but that was before I found out it didn't have to be a tragedy. To be in those situations. So I find I do best with a sense of balance. So as a Uber Libra, I like having two at the same time. But I've had some really great long-distance dynamics over the years, and I joke about having a timeshare submissive. There's some very good subs that...
I've had one of those.
Their mistresses or their wives will ship them out to me for like a summer camp, and then I'll send them home.
That's great. It's Alice's summer camp. Let's go to Alice's summer camp.
But I also get to travel, and I have a lot of trusted mistress friends that will share their lifestyle partners with my camera, and...
You're more than welcome to come see mine anytime.
Oh my goodness, yum. That sounds great.
As I told Zombie, I have a bedroom.
Excellent. He's a good boy. He's what I call my timeshare.
Okay.
I get to see him at Burning Man and a few other times.
So besides the video empire you've built for yourself, who is Alice?
I'm a mischief maker. My goal is to serve the cause of global enlightenment for all beings. I just happen to do it in really dirty ways.
Wow, honey, could that be any smaller? It's like, don't take on a big mantle, no.
I love this stuff. I mean, I want people to be able to accept themselves the way I was fortunate enough to. When you go to the Folsom Street Fair as a teenager, you never have that feeling that you're the only one. Like we snuck in there with fake IDs. I'm not going to get anyone in trouble, but when you see 500,000 people taking over the streets, there's never this sense of, oh, there's something wrong with me because I like this, or what's the matter with me? Why can't I be normal? I'm the only one. Like, no, there's 500,000 people in the streets. They're all being freakier than you could ever imagine. Go for it.
So it sounds like both you and I were lucky enough to grow up in an environment where that was the norm and accepted. I mean, I grew up in Chicago.
Oh, yep.
It was Leather Gay Bar Central,
exactly,
as opposed to San Francisco or Wisconsin. So I had that opening up of being in a community right away. How do you feel about someone who came from the middle of the country where they didn't have that?
Well,
what advice would you give them for discovering themselves when they may not have the opportunities that you and I had?
I would say at this point, there's probably very few places in the United States where the BDSM community is more than a 4-hour drive away from you. I would say that for almost everywhere, except possibly parts of Alaska, 4-hour drive will get you somewhere where other people are gathering under the BDSM umbrella.
And the internet now is a great way to find them.
Exactly. Go to where the real people are. The internet is sound and fury signifying nothing. The internet is smoke and mirrors. Anyone can say anything on the internet. And for those of you male submissives that are complaining about the lack of female dominance, the only place where there's more women, or where there's more men than women, is the internet. If you come to real life events, the numbers are way more balanced. But those women aren't looking for partners on the internet. Those women are looking for partners who show up.
Exactly.
So you have to show up first.
Right. I don't know a lot of lifestyle female doms that look for a partner or a male submissive online. They go to events. They go to munches. They go to Club Femme. They go to foot parties. They go to Sissy events. They are actively seeking and out in the events instead of sitting behind a keyboard.
Exactly. Yeah. So go get out there. If I can drive 3 hours each way to host my munch, surely you can drive 3 hours to attend it.
Yeah. So one of the things you've done lately that I love and admire is your Sissy Club. So can you tell me a little bit about what it is, or about my listeners, how it started and why? What got you going with it?
Why sissies?
You gotta love sissies, but why?
the third Wednesday of every month at Wicked Grounds in San Francisco is the cross-dressing club. We call ourselves Sissy Night. I understand that sissy is a slur for some people, but I consider it to be a gender-neutral term of femininity. I got called a sissy in sports a lot as an insult, and I would like to reclaim it. So sissy can be a term of endearment, it can be a term of pride, but it's a purgative based on excessive femininity. So our event is all about embracing and accepting femininity outside of the idea of passing, outside of the idea of femininity being related to your genitals configuration, just femininity for the sake of femininity.
That's fantastic.
All things feminine. So it's really grown over the years. I would say now we have about around 300 active members, but
That's
at any
incredible.
given time, probably around 30 people will attend our monthly meetup. But there are people from all over the world who will schedule their visits to San Francisco to try and coincide with that third Wednesday. Now that we've been going for 7 years, we have regulars that we see once a year.
Yeah, congratulations. That is a fantastic run. So why did you start it? Did you see a void? Was there a need in your community? Did you just say, hey, there's no representation for cross-dressers and I want to provide it?
Two things happened. One, I was the best man at a wedding where all of the groomsmen and the groom were all cross-dressers who were out to me, but not out to each other.
Oh, wow. That must have been interesting.
They were all male friends that had way more in common than they had any idea of. And as the as the best man, I was in charge of planning the bachelor party, but I had this privileged information from all of them. So that was kind of the proto-original Sissy Night, was this bachelor party where I had permission to out themselves to each other, essentially. And then as a follow-up, I had a Victorian Gothic tea party in a cemetery where it was only women.
Still my heart.
It was all women who showed up, except half of the women were secretly boys. And that was the final straw of okay, we really need to just start doing this regularly. We don't have to use euphemisms like Gothic tea party. Let's just have a cross-dressing club. Let's see who else shows up. And with that group of 5 people, we just kind of built it up from there. And when Wicked Grounds opened, they were really cheerfully willing to give us a space that I think had the critical ingredient of allowing us to change our clothes.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And being allowed to change clothes at Wicked Grounds kind of threw wide the floodgate to everyone at home who couldn't dress up at home for whatever privacy reasons, couldn't dress up at work for whatever privacy reasons, or who had to go home in male mode again afterwards.
Right.
And having a venue where we can change clothes together and support one another and teach each other the arcane feminine skills of makeup application and stuff. Has really become the big builder of our community. And we have an after party at Bondage a Go-Go, and that's really fun. But it's interesting that some people will never come to the munch part, are only interested in the after party, whereas other people will only ever come to the munch and feel that going to the after party would be just a little too naughty when it comes to breaking their vows to partners. They value an opportunity to be en femme, but draw the line at
going to
kinky things happening. So it's interesting that we have a social and a play aspect to our group by virtue of having these great venues in town in San Francisco.
That's fantastic. Yeah. I have a very similar thing in the Club Femme in Chicago. Is we have a munch and we have a play party at my dungeon, and we have people who will strictly go to the munch and not come to the party because the party is clothed female, nude male. And they are uncomfortable taking their clothes off, or they feel that going to the dungeon breaks a vow, or becoming naked in front of other people breaks a vow. So they'll come to the munch because then they can sit and discuss femdom, male submissive dynamic, but they won't come to the play party. And then we have people who only come to the play party because they want to go and get played with or be naked, and because they're exhibitionists, but they won't go to the munch because they're not interested in more of the, I would say, mundane education, social aspect.
Yeah. So I think it's important to have both when it comes to building a healthy kink community. If all we do is talk about it, that's not quite as fun.
That is fun.
But if we only see each other in the dungeon, then we miss out on conversations.
Yes. Even though I don't know about it at my parties, everybody always ends up naked in the kitchen with, talking.
That sounds like a good way to end a party.
It's like, why are you all hanging in the kitchen? There's a load of dungeon equipment here. What are you doing? Oh, we're talking. All right, people, whatever. We're having some great conversations. You're all standing around nude. Doesn't make sense to me, but so.
Yum.
But it's been fantastic talking to you.
I've really enjoyed getting to know you a little bit and talk with you some.
Thank you. And thank you for taking time out of our busy DomCon schedule.
It's my favorite event.
Yeah. So why is it your favorite event?
This is my 11th DomCon. I started coming here as a camera person for someone else's website, the Serious Bondage Guys, actually. I was their camera girl for a long time before the site was even a sparkle in my eye. But this is one of the only times that we see each other in person. And I find that online, the rivalries, the cattiness, because everyone's so focusing on marketing and image, it lacks the camaraderie that in-person live interactions have. It's much more warm when we're face-to-face and in person. There's that wall of text. People will say and do things to each other on the internet that they'd never say and do in person.
Exactly.
And I think that DomCon kind of separates the real from the fake in some ways. You have to have a certain amount of skill, self-confidence, and chutzpah to even show up. But once you're here, it's a very warm, inviting community in my experience.
I would agree with that. I've been going for 15 years.
Yeah.
Date myself there. How would you consider that DomCon has changed over the years? Because some of us have had conversations with it. And I think Miss Cyan has done a fabulous job with it. But, we lost Atlanta. And we
gained New Orleans.
We've gained New Orleans, which is in some ways woohoo. But it has kind of changed focus a little bit over the years, where it is becoming more interested with lifestylers coming in. And some of the pro-doms have, said that is not necessarily the focus of where we should be, because we need a safe space to talk about our industry as well. And so how do you feel? Has it changed at all? You've been going just as long as I have. What's your feeling about it?
I think it's dangerous to artificially divide the lifestyles from the pros, because most of the best pros are also lifestylers. And I also think that there are lots of lifestylers that want a piece of what we have, if that makes sense.
It makes complete sense.
a pro is the very best person to learn from, because they don't do it once a year on your anniversary. They do it every weekend or every day in some cases. The vast repository of skills in this community have always been held, maintained, and passed on by professionals who use them. So I think that dividing it artificially, especially like FetLife seems to be trying to do, is a disaster when it comes to newbies trying to teach newbies, compared to drawing on this vast web of experience. So in some ways, I welcome the lifestylers to come learn from us. But I also really appreciate the 2 days of industry-only classes.
Agreed. And I think that's a great way to keep a balance. You know, I actually think that for those of us that can't come in as early, I wouldn't mind some industry ones like on Sunday.
I would like an alternate track to continue.
I would like an alternate
weekend.
track to, right, exactly. Because while it's fantastic for new people who come in to learn basic skills like the clothespin class, which I think is great, I've been doing clothespins for 25 years, honey. You're an expert at clothespins. Okay? That's at a class that I don't want to go to.
Well,
so
to muddy the waters a little bit, if I had a friend who was in her first year of pro-doming, that'd be the perfect class for her.
Perfect class, exactly.
Because that's a skill set and a script that she can play for the next 100 scenes or so with relatively low risk to her clients.
Right. So how do we balance it so that there are industry tracks for different levels?
I think offering a balance of beginner and advanced industry classes is important. For years, there's been a nervousness about not wanting to have a 2.0 class. It's always a 1.0.
Right.
And now I think that our industry and our members are mature enough that advanced classes will have quite a following.
To interject on you with that, I don't know, do you go to a lot of lifestyle events?
I would say that I go to a fair number of them.
Okay. I have noticed the same trend in lifestyle events, where I don't know if it was a backlash a few years ago, but they've started to stay away from the 2.0, 3.0 heavy edge play classes and kind of gone back to more the basic learning skills. So I don't think that's necessarily just DomCon. I think that's kind of a community-wide trend. With an unknown reason that I'm not so sure why it's happening.
I think some of it was social pressure to integrate the 50 Shades of Grey fandom into our community.
I block that out.
Which, I mean, a lot of those folks needed what I would call remedial BDSM classes to kind of unlearn the stereotypes they'd acquired.
Right.
But I think that every few years there are waves of popularity of BDSM, either because of a media or a movie or book. You know, something will set that spark alight again, and we'll be getting a huge influx of people.
Right. And I've noticed that with my sessions.
And I think the first time it happened, we descended on the bar scene, and the gay folks were like, "What the hell are all these straight people doing
Who are
here?"
these people here? Right.
And then there was a publishing boom in books, and then the internet happened, and now it's a social media evolution. And at every step of the way, we've kind of gotten further and further from face-to-face meetings. So that's why I like lifestyle events so much, is they get it back down to basics of you have to show up to participate.
Right.
But as we try to absorb and integrate and kind of enculturate all these waves of new people, there's kind of a push to go back to basics again and again and again that leaves the 30, 40-year folks in a bit of a lonely place.
It does.
So if you're listening, I encourage you to book advanced classes to your event. Or also sometimes the local community will pick up the slack there.
Yes,
where
the clubs.
The clubs that meet every month.
Yes, that is very true.
But DomCon, I think, needs to continue offering industry classes, and we need to get beyond the basics.
Agree. I'm right there with you. No. The other thing I'd like to see them kind of add is more roundtables.
Those can be difficult to moderate. Can we do roundtable with a timer and a talking stick?
Yes, a talking stick. I have the talking stick.
Yeah, we need a conch shell.
Yeah, we do tend to kind of run on each of us. So a talking stick is a great idea. But I think it would be great just to have like a coffee clutch, kind of like we're doing now, where we just sit around, we share ideas. And that's part of the reason that I love DomCon, is because I get to meet everybody and I get to actually know my fellow dominas and their personalities and who they are, as opposed to just seeing you on Twitter or Instagram. And I can also sit around and say, hey, I've experienced this lately with my clients or my work. How are you dealing with this? And it helps us give a support system to each other.
Exactly.
And I think that is face-to-face conversations is great, as opposed to, I love talking to you guys online. It helps me stay connected to you between this, but it doesn't replace it.
Yeah. I had to deal with a lot of my fears of friendship with other women in the course of kind of coming into my own at this event, I was very concerned that this would be a giant version of Heather's.
It's not.
There are some Heathers here, but it's much more of a black sheep convention.
Yes,
we are the women that you grew up staring at and admiring and being afraid of, but wanting to be.
Exactly.
You know, it's like we're the anti-cool kids, but that's what makes us cool. And we're all here together now.
And we're all being cool together, so watch out.
Exactly.
Here we come. On that note, again, I want to thank you.
Thank you so much.
I would like to have my listeners know how to get a hold of you and what's the best way to watch your videos.
Oh, I am AliceInBondageland.com. If you'd like to participate in the cross-dressing club, we have a Patreon, which is Patreon/AliceInBondageland, and that'll take you to the updates about the cross-dressers pageants that we're having and some of the special classes we're having a brow workshop.
Great idea.
Have a makeup class.
Oh.
We have an annual clothing exchange because none of us know what our internet size is.
Especially if you order from China.
Exactly. So AliceInBondageland.com, Alice in Bondageland on Patreon. And since Twitter doesn't let me have a long name, I'm just Bondageland on Twitter.
Oh, that's
for as
fun.
long as Twitter lets us enjoy that privilege.
Exactly. Are you on Instagram?
I am on Instagram as Alice in Bondageland as well.
There we go.
I'm a little less active. There's a lot more hockey photos there.
If you guys didn't get it, Alice is a hockey fan. What is your team of choice?
Oh, go Sharks. San Jose all the way.
On that note, Alice, thank you very much.
Yay, we survived.
Awesome. We did it. Yay. Listeners, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this installment of Femdom Mystique. Look for more to come from DomCon. I have some great interviews lined up. And maybe you'll see me in a video with Alice, but I think I may have to give her a Disney theme. We may have to do Naughty Princesses or something.
Oh, that sounds fun.
All right. This is your hostess, Miss Simone, signing out. Thank you.